Today I'm going to give you my list of things that you can do around the house prior to that home inspection for very little money or less than $100 in most cases that will greatly help that home inspection report look a lot cleaner when it comes back. All right, so I am not a home inspector, but I've been doing this for quite a few years now. I've seen a lot of home inspection reports. I've gone through them with my buyers as well as the sellers I'm representing, and they can get pretty nasty looking. There's no way of getting around it sometimes. There's just a lot of stuff. So the big thing that I see is that you get a home inspection report that comes back with just a laundry list of things. It's just little things, one after the next, and then that whole thing just kind of has this compounding effect for buyers when they see this, and they're just like, oh my gosh, there are so many things that are just wrong with this house. So that kind of scares people and just kind of gets them, the honeymoon is over as far as when they fell in love with the house. And there's a lot of little things that you can do, simple, easy checks, easy fixes. You can go down to a hardware store, a couple bucks, and replace things that really can just minimize that headache and stress. So I'm going to break it down into 5 major categories. So you have electrical, plumbing, you have your HVAC system, you have your water heater, and you have your roof. Those are the 5 big areas I'm going to cover. And then the other areas is kind of miscellaneous stuff that kind of just falls into a miscellaneous category that you can take a look at and fix. So let's start with electrical. So you can go and get a $5 receptacle tester and basically go and just plug this into every single receptacle outlet that you have around your house. And it'll usually give you an indicator on there whether you have a faulted ground or if it's wired backwards with your hot and neutral wires. But simple thing, $5, plug it into every outlet. The home inspector is definitely going to do it and note everything on the report there. You can catch a bad outlet that you didn't know about right there, and it only costs you $5 and plugging stuff in. You can listen to music while you do it too. So there you go. Next thing I see come up all the time is GFCI outlets. So that's a ground fault circuit protector, like interrupter outlet. So it's usually one that has little buttons in the middle that you press and it kind of clicks. A lot of them are self-testing to make sure they actually are working properly. Use that receptacle tester in there to test it, to make sure it's working. But you need to have these typically anywhere there's a water source, usually within 6 feet of a water source, so like 6 feet from a sink. Usually you require these in bathrooms entirely, underneath the sink where the dishwasher or your disposal plugs into. Just think anywhere there's a water source. You'll want to have these in the garage as well to protect that circuit out there, as well as exterior outlets. These are all GFCI outlets as well. And typically exterior, you have to have the proper covering. It's like a cover plate, a little thing that flips up. So just go around and make sure those are all working, self-test them, and make sure that you have them. Some homes, depending on the code when it was built, or if someone remodeled it incorrectly, they just didn't use the right outlet. So make sure you have GFCI outlets within all those water sources around the kitchen, bathrooms, laundry rooms. Just make sure they're there. And so while you're checking all of the outlets, all your receptacles, something that always comes up is just loose receptacles, just loose light switches, things like that. It's such a simple thing. Just if it feels loose, get a little flathead or whatever it is, Phillips, and just tighten it up and just make sure everything is just tightened up so that way it's just not going to show up on the inspection report. And so if you go to the exterior of your house, you're going to have your whole circuit breaker panel there. If you lift up the cover, you're going to see all the different breaker slots there. You never want to have an open space. So you never want to have breakers and then just like an open space in the actual metal panel. You want to have, they have a little filler, spacer fillers. They're like $2 for a little plastic filler. Buy them at the hardware store. They go right in there, so you just have no spaces in between breakers. Really simple, easy fix, but anytime, especially on a circuit panel, anything that calls out on there, buyers are always going to get very, very worried because they're just, hey, this is like the main electrical system and now something's wrong with it, even though it's just a space. It's a safety thing. You can't have open space where a finger could go in your circuit breaker box, and you get electrocuted. So simple safety thing, $2 at the hardware store, easy fix. And then the final thing is just run all your systems, making sure while you're testing outlets, everything works. Run your dishwasher through all the cycles, make sure it works properly. Run your disposal, make sure it's working properly. Check your pool, your spa equipment, just make sure everything is running the way it's supposed to be. And also check it's a good time, we'll get into it during HVAC stuff, but check the condenser unit outside, the actual big kind of thing that has like a fan that spins around. Make sure it's actually coming on. Sometimes your HVAC could come on while you're running AC, but the condenser itself could have a tripped breaker, bad breaker, and it's just not coming on. So just really go around and just make sure that everything is just running and that there's nothing that's got a bad breaker or something that's just keeping it from actually operating. All right, the next area that we really want to look at is plumbing. So anything related to plumbing typically just means we're looking at water. So water leads to moisture, moisture leads to things like growing, organic growth, mold, things like that, which definitely not something you want to show up on a home inspection report or just happen in general in your house because it causes other issues. All right, so easiest thing you can do is just get underneath every single sink in your house. Go underneath your sink, check it out, take a look. It's usually full of all sorts of stuff, cleaning supplies, everything that's packed in there. Sometimes keep trash cans, bins, whatever in there, recycling. So just get under your sinks, move everything out of the way, and check for leaks. So biggest thing is just check for leaks. Do you see any active leaks? Does it look like there's been a slow drip, past leaks? Is there signs of water kind of on the back of the drywall, on the bottom of the cabinet, things like that? And then while you're there, check the 2 water shut-off valves. It'll be a hot and cold. If it looks green and kind of white, kind of like crusty buildup, it's been corroding with some of that lime calcium deposits. It'll usually get called out in home inspection. So those are about $9 at the store. Easy replacement, shut off your water main, take the old one off, put the new ones on, you're good to go. If you do have leaks, things like that were there, you can easily, patch and replace some drywall pieces. You can replace, any damaged wood that was caused, damaged by anything that was leaking, repaint, and that'll just be something that doesn't pop up. It won't look nasty on the report, and it'll be good to catch those things before they become a really big issue and cause some serious water damage. Next thing is your drains. Do you have slow drains? Do you got a lot of crazy hair? You got a lot of people in the house with lots of crazy hair? You probably got stuff in that drain. So every drain, every sink, it's gonna have a little U-trap typically on the bottom of it. That's there so you can take that off, pull that piece off. It's usually a little piece about this big. You can take that out, clean it out, just make sure it's got nothing in it, put it back on. Any drain that's going real slow, that's typically the problem. Once you clean that out and replace it, that thing's gonna flow and drain the way it's supposed to. Another thing that pops up is the actual line from the bottom of the sink to the trap. People will sometimes use little flexible lines to kind of adjust because the angles are weird. Those are typically not approved to code and are always called out in home inspection reports. So if you have a flexible line, I just recommend having a proper line put in, maybe $5, $6 to $10 worth of PVC pipe at the store, and just replace those and get them done the right way. And then while you're at the sink, check the faucets. Are the faucets loose in any way? If they are, you can usually tighten them up underneath. If they're damaged and crusty, again, green and white calcium lime deposits, maybe just think about replacing them if they're just kind of leaking from the valves, the O-rings that are in there. But check that they're tight, everything's secure, and also check, make sure you got hot water when you turn the hot water on. Does it, not come on at all? Is there an issue there? Make sure the cold water's working, and make sure that the water pressure looks right. Does it look like it's just like coming out crazy hard? Is it kind of coming out too slow, or is it inconsistent? As well as the actual faucet itself. There'll be a little like screen diffuser on there. Sometimes those get kind of corroded or clogged up, and it'll just be kind of spraying out in a weird way. You can screw those off, buy a new one at the hardware store, put them on, and you'll be good to go. So check those things, make sure everything there is looking good and working the way it should be. And one last thing while you're at the sink, make sure your stops are working. So the little thing in the back typically that you pull up and the little thing in the middle of the sink goes down so you can fill it up with water. Home inspector is gonna fill all that up, make sure it can hold the water, and then he's also gonna drain it to see how quick it does drain down. So that's part of the inspection. So make sure those stops are working. You know, the little plunger thing that you pull, make sure it's working right. If it's not, again, those are like an $8 part at the hardware store. If it's not working, you can replace those easily. Underneath the sink, it's a quick little repair, and that's just an easy thing you can do. Get it done and it won't pop up. All right, so moving on, more plumbing items. Check out those toilets. So a lot of times you'll hear the toilet running. This is typically something where the water's just running. It's got that low kind of sound. That's usually because the actual toilet float is not adjusted properly, or you might have some bad, flapper seals in the actual tank of the toilet. But there's typically something that's not right there. So again, that's an easy fix. You can easily adjust the float within the actual tank. It's just a simple chain at times to make sure that that's adjusted correctly. They're all kind of newer ones now, so it's typically a little threaded like plastic screw, and it just adjusts the level at which the float will kick off so everything seals up. And sometimes, like I said, you'll have a little like rubber flapper kind of O-ring in the tank. Sometimes those can be dried up and it's just letting water seep in. It's just constantly having to kind of refill itself. Easy parts, $5 to $10 for a thing of O-rings or a new float assembly. Really simple thing that you can do by yourself. You don't need a plumber. And you have water shutoffs valves there too at the toilet that you can shut off so you don't have water going everywhere. And while you're there, you can make sure those water shutoff valves aren't leaking either and that they're not corroded. If they are, shut off the main, replace those valves, same thing, $9 part, get it done, get it out of the way. And then before we kind of move on, while you're at sinks, while you're at toilets, a really easy thing to do is get some latex caulking. You can get white, you can get clear, you can get all sorts of colors. Around the sink, if you see that it's like kind of rusty looking or grimy looking, or it looks like this chunky stuff where like backsplashes along the back of the sink, you'll usually see a bead of caulking there. Sometimes if that's dried up or it's cracked, any water that falls on top of the countertops, kitchen backsplashes, bathroom backsplashes, around the edge of the sink, any water that splashes around those edges, if that caulking is not still in good condition, that water can leak through those things, go around the outside of the sinks, down into the cabinet spaces. They can land on the top of the counter, drain to the backsplash, and then actually go down the back end of the cabinet. So that's not a good thing either. That could be where you see signs of moisture, where it's coming from. If you get, latex caulking, get the right stuff at the hardware store, you're probably looking at about a $10 thing of caulking, which we can do pretty much the whole house if you need to. And just do a nice little clean thing of caulking around the backsplash. You can do it clear if it's a tile that you don't want to try and match colors. Nice little thin bead of caulking around there, tighten that up, seal everything up, and just know that the home inspector then won't have to call that out or say that there's leaking water coming from those areas. And last but not least, if you have a sub foundation where you're actually not on a slab foundation, if you have a sub foundation, you can actually get under the house in the crawl space. I definitely recommend that you put some dirty clothes on and bring a flashlight, because it's gonna be dark and creepy under there if you haven't been. But under the crawl space, you can see all of your plumbing lines, all your sewer drain lines that are connecting. And it's another thing to see if you have any pipes that are under there that are just leaking at the seals and the fittings, any sort of drain lines that are just looking really nasty and corroded. Good thing to get in there and catch them. You can fix most of that stuff. Again, go to the hardware store and just buy the parts for cheap and just do them yourself. So that's, again, you never go into there, so you don't really know what's happening, but as soon as a home inspector gets under there, it could look really ugly if you haven't been under there in a while. All right, so moving on, we've got our electrical done, we've got some plumbing stuff done. That's all tightened up now, looking good. Now we're gonna move on to our HVAC system. So that's our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. This typically you'll see your furnace, your actual furnace that's going to be heating up for your heater. These will typically be located in the attic at times. Sometimes they'll be located in like a utility closet or just in the garage itself, where you can kind of easily access everything. Depending on where it's located, if it's in the attic, typically it will require like a drip pan that it sits on top of, so that if it does leak, it doesn't just leak all the way down in your attic and down your walls and make a big old mess. So wherever it is, go take a look at it. Inspect it just again for leaking stuff, little drips, that corrosion, that white and green corrosion kind of around fittings. Check for those areas just to see kind of overall, how does it look? Does it look like it's in good condition? If it is up in the attic, does it have that drip pan? Does it have those proper overflow drips that go in that area? Just check everything to make sure it looks good. So once you've located it, you checked it out, and it's looking good, no leaks, nothing weird, no water around the area. Now you just want to run it. Just make sure it's running. I mean, this is San Diego. It's rare that we really run the heater if you need to, but run the heater. Actually kick it on, go to every vent in the house, make sure you can feel it. Does it feel like it's getting hot? Does it feel like it's working? You can have a thermal gun, to actually hit it, but you don't really need that. I mean, you can tell. Is it working? Is it warming up my house? Does it work? Yeah. So overall, just check the system to make sure it's working. You can use your thermostat. Does it kick on when it's supposed to? Does it kick off when it hits that temperature? Kind of just checking the whole thing out. Now that you know it's actually working, that your heater is properly functioning, now you want to actually get to where you pull out the filter within the furnace itself. So every heater will have its own filter within it. These are typically in the range of $10 to $30, depending on what kind of filter you get. Every home inspection that I see, that I take a look at, these filters are always disgusting. They're super dirty. They've never been changed out at times, or it's just old. Just replace it. A couple bucks, you replace the filter, you put a brand new one in there. If it's still looking good, great. Just kind of give it a shake, get anything that's like stuck to it, but just replace it and you have that done. There's another filter, it'll either be in your ceiling, in like an access panel. This is your return air filter, or it'll be on like a wall, like a lower portion of a wall, kind of a big metal kind of grate looking thing. That's the return air filter that kind of sucks everything into the system. This has a filter as well. So again, pop that thing out, replace it. We're talking, 10 to 20 bucks, if you just go on kind of the cheaper side. Get that done. It's all looking good. It's not going to show up on the inspection report and kind of make people think that your furnace or your heater is like in bad condition in some way because it has a dirty filter. And also too, on your furnace, there's going to be a vent pipe on it because it does create heat, and it has to vent this heat out of your house for obvious reasons. So check to make sure that vent hood is properly secured on top of the furnace, wherever it's located, and that the actual venting pipe is venting out good as well, and that it's properly secured, not hanging and dangling all weird. If it has any gaps in it, it's duct tape. It's literally, it's a special kind of heat, silver shiny heat looking duct tape that's meant for this, like HVAC systems. And you just put it together and just duct tape everything nice and tight, and just make sure it's all, tightened up, fastened up, venting the way it's supposed to, and you're good to go. Another really important thing to check for your HVAC system, you can actually do this pretty much while you're checking other things up in your attic crawl space. It's going to be all your duct work. So when you turn on your heater, your air conditioning, that has to come from one central spot and then go distribute out to all the different vents throughout your house. So you're typically going to have a plastic kind of slinky looking hose that's wrapped in a nice insulation with a plastic covering. All these lines are going to be going throughout the house in your attic space. So when you're up there, just check to make sure there's no kind of deteriorating plastic, it's tearing. Make sure, a lot of times, the most common thing I see is critters. You have a rat or a mouse at one point. makes a nest or something is chewing through that plastic insulation, and then you get a tear. So that's basically allowing that heat, that air to go up into your attic space, which is could potentially cause a condensation issue with temperature changes, and it's just not letting your system perform. So you may not feel the heat or the cool air coming out of those vents, in a good pressure even like you want to, because your ductwork is, it's got a hole in it somewhere, or it's got a kink, or maybe a pipe or a box at times. Christmas decorations, storing stuff up there, something falls and lands on a vent, ductwork, and it just messes things up. So check that out. If you do have something that's damaged, literally you can buy that as well at the hardware store, a section of it, and it's ducting, it's ductwork, which means duct tape. So you just tape it up nice and tight, connect that section in between, and you're good to go. Problem solved, and you'll be looking good. And last but not least, on your HVAC, on your heater system, make sure that you don't smell gas. Kind of obvious, but not everyone really knows what gas smells like. It smells like a very sulfuric, rotten eggy smell. They put that smell in gas intentionally so you can smell it when there's a gas leak. So just kind of check around the valves, like the gas lines going into there, and just smell if you really smell any sort of pungent, weird, funky smell. If you do, you can call your gas company. I would recommend immediately shutting off your main gas line just to be safe. But call someone out immediately to have that addressed if that is the case. If you don't smell anything, you're good. So, but definitely in that case, I would call a professional and have them look at that just to be safe, because you don't want to mess with a gas leak. All right, so we're moving on pretty good down here. We've got electrical, we've got plumbing, we've checked out our HVAC system. Now I want to look at, it's not a big topic, a big thing. It's just one system, but it is probably the most important system that I see come up all the time where there's issues with it. It gets called out, and that is your water heater. So this bad boy, everyone loves it. I mean, everyone wants a hot shower. Everyone wants that thing to keep working. And when it doesn't, and when it fails, it's a big problem. So water heater's next. All right, so the biggest thing that I see, most common thing that pops up in a home inspection report is that the water heater is not properly double strapped, which is for earthquake tip protection. So we will require the water heater to be actually double strapped to the wall, and not just double strapped like kind of across it and to the wall, but it has to be wrapped all the way around the water heater and double strapped to the wall. So there's a specific way that it has to be done. So you can look up the code of just how to have it properly double strapped. Super easy to do. They sell the kits at most every hardware store. Typically, if you don't have any straps, they're typically around 40 to 50 bucks for both straps. You screw them into the wall, kind of lag bolt it to the wall, and it's maybe about a 30-minute to an hour job if it hasn't been done before. But just make sure those double strapped earthquake straps are on there. The next thing for your water heater is the vent hood. So just like your HVAC system, it's creating some heat. There's a lot of heat that's coming out. The heat's got to go somewhere. So there'll be a little hood vent on the top of it, and this is going to be connected to more kind of metal piping that's going to go out to your exterior. So make sure that hood is on there, it's secured properly. It typically has like 3 little posts just screwed on there. It's pretty basic. Just make sure it's on there good. Make sure that that vent pipe is secure the same way as your HVAC, and just make sure there's no gaps in the pipe. If there are, use that special heat resistant duct tape, seal things up, or if you have to actually replace sections of the pipe, it's a super cheap item at the hardware store as well. It's usually within $5 to $10. All right, so the biggest thing on your water heater is the actual water going into it. So you'll see 2 like copper lines coming out of the wall going down to the water heater. There usually be valves on there as well, but check those lines. Check to make sure that they don't have a bunch of that green, white, calcium corrosion. Check for leaks around that area. If they do look kind of nasty, you should probably just consider replacing those. You're probably looking at about $15 to $20 for new copper lines, or between about $5 to $10 for new valves if you actually have to replace the actual valves on there. But those are something that if you see leaking, corrosion on a water heater like that, It's usually a sign that it's now going into the tank and causing other corrosion type issues within the tank. So it's just a sign that you either have a premature kind of failure problem that's going to happen down the road, or you can catch it before it gets bad and causes that problem. So replace those. If there's nothing wrong there's no leaks, looks good, you're good to go. Same thing on those water lines. There'll typically be foam insulation around them. It's like a black foam with like the slip all the way down. You can buy this again at the hardware store. It's never really, it's kind of in between. Sometimes it gets called out, sometimes it doesn't. Because you have hot water and cold water, it causes condensation on those lines, which can cause moisture. If you put that insulation around there, it typically keeps it insulated enough from the outside air, change temperature of the line to prevent any sort of condensation. So you can put those on there easily. It's like a couple bucks for like a 2-foot section of it that you'll need. And that way, if the home inspector sees it, he'll check it off as good. Makes your tank look really good, like it's been taken care of as well. So easy, quick, simple thing you can do yourself. Another thing to check, so your water heater is going to have something called a TPS valve. This is a temperature pressure relief valve. And basically it's this little kind of like flicky little valvey thing. It's usually on the top of the tank, sometimes it's on the side of the tank. But it's going to have a copper line that's going to go from it, a section of pipe, and it's either going to want to point all the way straight down to the ground, or it's going to point all the way out to the exterior of the house. Most of the time they're pointing all the way to the exterior of the house. They should be pointing to the exterior of the house per proper installation code, all that. Some homes are old and funky or whatever, and they just point straight to the ground. I've seen that, especially if the tank is outside or in a different location. It just depends, but make sure that valve is, it's there, it's got that proper copper line pointing all the way down, or that it's pointing all the way to the exterior. Just check that out, make sure nothing looks weird on it, and as long as it has that, that's typically, you're good to go. Inspector's not gonna call it out and have an issue with that. All right, so moving on, the water heater. I told you this is a big one. There's a lot of stuff that's on the water heater, gets called out all the time. So if the water heater is in the garage, depending where it's at, typically if it's in the garage, it should be on a platform. It's at least about 1.5 foot platform at times, that it's raised above the actual ground level. This is for when you have flooding type of hazard in the garage. It's not going to put out your pilot light, which then just lets gas kind of flow into the house, that kind of thing. Obviously, gas flowing in your house, again, not good, but check the platform, make sure it's good, make sure it's level, not kind of rocking or unstable. And then it should also be sitting on top of that platform. Right underneath the water heater should actually be a big drip pan. So this can be metal pan. A lot of them now are just like formed plastic pans, and they got a little hole in the side that allows for a PVC pipe to connect to it and then point straight down to the actual floor level. So if your water heater does have a leak, catastrophic leak, whatever it is, it drips in that pan and will then funnel out to the ground level and then hopefully slope out your garage nice without soaking up your walls and getting into the house, behind the walls and getting, in there and just causing issues. So if it doesn't have a pan, that's about a $30 item at the hardware store. You do have to lift up the water heater to install it. You can do this, it's a bigger job, but it's something you can do yourself. You drain the water heater of all the actual water, turn off all your gas, your water lines. You can have someone actually help you just lift it up to put that pan under there and do that the proper way, so it's gonna be up to code. All right, so going now to the gas line that supplies your water heater. Again, same like with our HVAC system, check for smells. Do you smell gas? Do you smell that rotten egg funkiness? See if there's anything there that just looks kind of odd. Do you see weird corrosion around that valve? If you do, if you smell gas, again, immediately shut off your main gas. You can call the gas company to come out, and most times you can call the professional to come out and fix that issue. If you don't smell any gas and all looks good, the other thing to check for is a sediment trap on the gas line. This is a newer code. Not all water heaters were required to have it, but in most cases, a home inspector will call it out as saying it doesn't have a sediment trap. We highly recommend you should have one. And that can then just be something that comes up where a buyer, somebody says, hey, it doesn't have the proper sediment trap to catch, stuff in the gas line, so it falls in there. So this is easily something you can get at the hardware store. It's between a $25 to $35 little pipe section. You can easily shut off the gas if you know what you're doing, but I always highly recommend that you call someone for gas stuff if you don't. But you can easily shut off the gas, remove that gas line that goes into the actual kind of thermostat section of your water heater, pull it off, put that sediment trap pipe section in there, connect everything back up with the proper Teflon seals, everything, and you're good to go. You'll have the sediment trap that most newer water heaters do have. And last but not least, on the water heater, it provides hot water, right? So make sure that the water that's coming out of your faucets is hot enough, but not too hot. So the actual water heater will have a thermostat dial, depending on what it is and new or old, but check to see what it's set to. It really shouldn't be past 120 degrees. Anything that's too high, a home inspector will call out and say this is a scalding hazard, that if someone's washing their hands or showering and it's too hot, it'll allow a really, really hot temperature to come through the system and could potentially scald or burn somebody. So if that thing's past 120, I would recommend dialing it down to keep it within a good range. And then obviously you can check down the line, make sure everything is coming out nice and hot the way it's supposed to. All right, so now that all of our other stuff is working good, we've gone through everything. The last big item I really want to check out is the roof. So anything regarding the roof is always a big ticket item that people see and say, wow, something's wrong with the roof. The whole roof needs to be replaced now. This house is no good. So avoid that by taking a look at things. Get up in the attic first. So I recommend just getting in the attic first, any crawl space that's up there, kind of between where you can see the rafters and the raw actual like chipboard plywood of your roof, exterior roof, not the ceiling. You'll sometimes see spots on the ceiling, which you can check first. If you see a spot on the ceiling, probably means you have a leak. Doesn't mean it's from the roof. It could be from a leaky pipe within that space, leaking on the ceiling drywall, which is why you want to get in the attic and check the actual boards to see if you have stuff that's leaking from your exterior roof. So get in there and just check for water spots. As you see like old water spots, kind of an indicator that you might have a leak that you can check out somewhere on the exterior. But that's the first thing to do. Do you have those water spots on the actual roof boards that you can see? And so since we went inside the attic space to check out those water spots, if you have any, the next thing to do would be to get on the actual exterior of your roof. I really recommend that if you aren't comfortable with heights, you haven't done this before, you have a really tall 2-story home, maybe just get up on a ladder and see what you can see from the edge of the ladder. Typically what you're going to want to look out for is a cracked or slipped tile. This is really common. I'll see all the time in home inspection reports where a tile just, they're all kind of in a row and one will just kind of slip a little bit, and you can easily see that line, the edge of the tiles that are going down. One will just be a little bit off. A slip tile can be what's just causing enough for some water to get in there and just cause issues. You can easily go up, move that tile back up, kind of nail it back in place, and you're good to go. You'll see the same thing with composite shingles as well. Sometimes during a storm, it'll blow a section of shingles. They'll either get blown off or break. If it is getting to the point to where it's actually deteriorating, then you might have a bigger issue with roof actually is just at the end of its life and will probably need to be replaced, which could be something you could just, let them find in the home inspection, or you could disclose up front. You'll have that in your disclosures as far as the age of the roof that and just, negotiate that later. Or you could have the roof replaced and done if you need that. Could be anywhere between $6,000 to $15,000 depending on the size of your home, materials, whatnot. So while you're up on the roof, it's a good thing to check out all the different vents that are on top of your roof. We talked about the HVAC vent that was going out. We talked about the water heater vent. There's a couple of different types of vents. Some of them are really small, kind of like little tubes that are coming out. Check those and check around them to see there's something called mastic, which is like kind of a tar looking thing around the edges where it seals. This will typically get dried and start to crack, and a home inspection report will call that out and saying there's dry, cracked, or weathered mastic around flashing, vents, things like that. That's just another place for water to get into and cause a potential leak. So easy for you to go up there, scrape off the old mastic, get a thing of, a tub of like O. Henry's mastic at the hardware store for maybe 15 bucks, and just put the proper coat around there to seal everything up good, seal up the flashing where it is, and just tighten things up there. And then you're good to go. And while you're looking at those different miscellaneous vents, it's good to check out your chimney. So if you have a fireplace, you're gonna have a chimney going up there, and around the edge of the chimney, you're gonna have usually like an L-shaped flashing with more mastic all over that thing as well, to prevent water from going behind your flashing and causing leaks and other issues like that. So if it looks dried, if it looks cracked, just scrape all that old stuff off and put some new mastic on there, really tighten things up. Make sure you're not gonna have any potential leaks. I mean, this is good whether you're selling your house or not. You're just making sure you're not gonna have a big problem come up down the road because, well, you fixed a small issue that was starting to catch a bigger problem later. And when you're looking at the chimney, make sure it has the proper hood on top. So this is gonna prevent rain from just going straight into the chimney. It should have kind of a raised up, kind of a small hood. Each chimney is different depending on how big it is and whatnot, but make sure it's got that hood. Same with those other vent hoods coming from HVAC, water systems. They should have little raised up hoods on them as well, because they're bigger openings. It just prevents rain from getting in there. So these things blow off, sometimes they get knocked off, sometimes you got birds that, knock them off, whatever. You would never know because how often do you go on your roof, right? So if you see them missing, buy them at the hardware store. Again, inexpensive item, you can replace those and it's just not an issue to have to worry about. And finally, while you're up on that ladder, checking out your roof or just up there in general, if you have rain gutters, which most houses typically will, not all of them do, depending on the architectural style, whatnot, but if you have rain gutters, perfect time to go through and just clean those things out. If you've got leaves and debris in there, especially clogging the downspout hole portion of the actual gutter, it'll just fill up and then it will start to backfill up underneath your flashing edge, your shingle, your tile edges of your roof, and actually cause some serious damage along there. It causes dry rot, fungal growth, which can then go down your stucco, your siding, and just cause this whole slew of issues and start cracking your. It can be all bad. It's crazy how bad a clogged rain gutter can actually cause a lot of damage. So clear those things out, get the pressure hose or just a regular hose and just clear those out. Make sure that the downspouts from the rain gutters are connected, not loose, so that they're actually gonna catch every bit of water. Make sure that downspout is funneling properly out and away from the property. Make sure it's not just kind of pooling right by the wall where it comes down. So if you have to adjust them or just maybe put an extension piece to kind of just come down from the wall and extend further out into the grassy areas or the kind of drainage area, wherever it is. Just check those, tighten them up, make sure they're looking good. If you're missing a downspout, you can easily buy those again at the hardware store. You can call a rain gutter company, they come out and make a custom one if you need to, but it's pretty off-the-shelf item in most cases to get. Simple fix, but just goes a long way, makes it look like your house is really, really tightened up and looking good. Okay, so that's it. We did all of our 5 main systems, my 5 main things. Really, this whole list is not in any particular order. These are just things that I always see come up. It's stuff that you can do yourself. You can chip away at this and really just bang these things out and get it done. On top of all these kind of main things that we look at, I have a little category of just miscellaneous stuff, just kind of put them all in one bag. But these are things that for sure will always come up on the home inspection. Some of them will be required to be there. in most cases. So this is just a little kind of snippet of things, miscellaneous items that you can quickly go through, check, make sure they're looking good, and just knock it out. And just know that you got a good solid home. It's going to show up good on the home inspection report, and you'll be good to go. So the biggest kind of number one thing, kind of miscellaneous item, it will be required in most cases. It's going to be smoke detectors and carbon monoxide or CO2 detectors. So you're going to need to have a smoke detector in every single room of your house. Every room. So every single bedroom or office, enclosed room like that, you will need to have one in every single room. You'll also need to have a smoke detector in every hallway between rooms as well. So if you have a hallway that goes from one bedroom to the other, or just one side of the house to the other, like a long hallway, you're going to have a smoke detector somewhere in that hallway as well. On top of that, you're going to need a CO2 or carbon monoxide detector, at least one in the house. If you have a 2-story house, you need to have one downstairs, you need to have one upstairs. So this is just going to detect any sort of carbon monoxide that's coming from, possibly a water heater, gas line, HVAC system, car exhaust from the garage, just different, sources of carbon monoxide that is really dangerous. You can't really smell it, and it's very harmful. It can be deadly as well. So it's something that you want to check for. As far as smoke detectors, every bedroom, you gotta have one, all the hallways, but you also have to have one in every living space. So every kitchen needs to have a smoke detector. Sometimes if the house is bigger, you can put, or smaller, you can put a smoke detector kind of between the kitchen and the living room, but it's gotta be close enough to the kitchen to where that's most likely where most fires start, is in the kitchen. So that's the big one that you really wanna make sure that you're covered there. Those all plug into the top. You can buy those in a big pack. Typically I buy them for around 20 bucks a piece. You can buy a big pack of them for like 50, 60 bucks to get you the whole house. The carbon monoxide smoke detector combo units are good too. So you can kind of get 2 in 1, plug that thing in, screw it in. Some of them are wired into the house. Some of them are just kind of self-contained units that you just screw into the wall or the ceiling. Super easy to do, super inexpensive, but they're going to be required. You can also get plug-in units for the carbon monoxide. Not smoke, because the smoke rises, but since carbon monoxide is a little bit of a heavier gas, you can get the plug-in to the wall, which can be a quick, simple fix. If you've got everything else, but you don't have a CO2 detector, buy the plug-in, stick it in, and you're good to go. You check all those boxes. The next item that's going to be required, it will be called out on the home inspection report as another safety issue like smoke detectors, is the garage sensors. So your garage door sensors, every time that garage door rolls up and every time you go to roll it down, if a child is running out there, if a car or something is going to drive through it while it's coming down, there's going to be 2 laser sensors on each side. Well, there's one laser and there's a kind of a receiver on the other side. That anything that crosses that while it's moving, it's going to immediately kill it and will stop going. So that way it doesn't hurt somebody or damage a car or whatever. So just check to make sure those are working. Simple, just hit the door and walk on through. I'm sure you've done this as well, where you go on, through your garage, you're trying to get your car in the driveway and you hit the button and you go run, you kind of see if you can jump over it so you don't trip it. It's that thing. So make sure they're working, make sure they trip. If they don't, a lot of times you just need to align them. So there'll be like red dots on them. If it's kind of blinky and weird, a lot of times you just need to kind of angle it to shoot at that glass, the receiver end, and that red light will just be a little bit brighter and kind of stay on consistently, and it'll be better aligned to actually make the connection. So from there, that'll typically fix it. If not, you can pick those up as well. Most of the time, like a universal one. Pick those up at a hardware store or call a garage door guy to come out and just replace it for you. And while you're in the garage, you want to make sure that the actual garage door from the house to the garage is a proper fire door. So it has to either be a solid core wood door that's fire rated, or it has to be a metal fire rated door. So this is just to prevent that if there's a big fire that starts in the garage, which is another common place for fires to start, that it won't just burn through and come into the house that easily. It's got a properly rated door. On top of that, a garage door actually has to be self-closing. So when you open it, it has to close by itself back. It's another safety precaution that comes up as far as a code requirement most times. Just make sure that the springs on there, typically there's a little pinhole. You can put a little nail in there, a pin, you can loosen it, pull out the set pin that's in there, tighten it up, put the pin in, and just put it in, pull it out, tighten it, put it in to make sure it closes properly, and then just make sure that it is a fire rated door. Easy peasy. Maybe about, it could be like an $80 to $100 door to be a proper fire replacement door, or fire rated door. But it's, again, something that can come up and just get it done, and it'll just help that inspection report look a lot cleaner. And a few last, very simple things. Just another thing I see come up often is if you have that fireplace, within your actual fireplace, there'll be a flue damper. You can open it or shut it. There's actually the damper itself. There's a little clamp on there, like a clamp stop. This is to prevent it from actually closing all the way. So it's like a little U-shaped clamp that you can get for, I think they're about $2, $3. And it goes on to the actual damper flap. It's just to prevent it from closing all the way in the case that you have a fire going. So that way, at least it's open enough, just a very small amount to let that exhaust up into the chimney if it hasn't been opened, and it's, just a safety precaution. So most home inspectors will call it out, say it's missing this, it's not safe, which scares buyers and just makes them think, oh, there's something wrong. If you don't have that clamp, buy it for $3 and just put it on there, and they'll see it and say, it's good to go, it checks the box, everything's good here. And then before we venture outside, check out other things around the house, make sure all your doors work. Open and shut those doors. So make sure when you shut a door that it's fully latched in there and you can't just pull it open without turning the knob. Make sure everything's shutting, make sure all your gates are latching. Just make sure those things are working. It's such a simple thing that we don't think about, or maybe we just deal with. We know how to fiddle the knob, or how to, you gotta push it a little bit more to actually get it to fully shut and stay latched. If it's not, you can adjust those a little bit. You can maybe, cut out a little bit, get a little bit different, doorknob. Maybe you just need to replace the knob and everything all together because it's worn out. Just make sure those things are just feeling good, feeling tight, and just working the way they should. So it's just a non-issue to have to worry about popping up on your inspection report. And finally, our last little miscellaneous item, if you have a sprinkler system around your house, go around the house and just make sure it works again. This is one of those things. Just make sure the system works. If it's on a timer system, run through your timer sequences, your different, your different phase settings, whatever it is. Make sure everything's coming on the way it should. You usually have a manual setting. You can go through each phase, going through the manual override. And then while you're doing that, check the sprinkler heads. Make sure they're not shooting water against your house. This will always get called out. You never want water shooting against your house from a sprinkler head. Deteriorates the stucco, it can cause cracking, it can cause molding issues, wood rot, fungus growth, just not a good thing. So make sure that the sprinkler heads are adjusted properly so they're not shooting against the property, the house structure itself, and make sure they're not broken. You'll see if that water spout's shooting up, like, oh, that thing is definitely broke. I need to replace that. Again, these are $3 items. You just screw off the head, put a new head on there, $3 or less, honestly. But then also check for cracked pipes. So if you have a sprinkler that looks like it's running fairly normal, operating good, but if you notice at the base of the actual sprinkler pipe, if it looks like kind of like a pooly, kind of wet soaked area, this is either a sign that it's cracked underground, at the fitting kind of T-junction of the whole sprinkler line, or that sprinkler head itself is just kind of cracked and leaking around the actual threaded portion and just leaking down the line. Or that the actual, if it's like a pop-up sprinkler head, that pop-up assembly whole thing is just worn out. There's bad O-ring seals in there or whatever. You can replace those. They're super cheap, easy to do. And that way you just don't have that as an issue where it can look kind of ugly on a home inspection report. One other item that I want to address is termite and pest evidence. So while you're going around your house looking at things, if you see any little ball kind of wood droppings around things, if you see wood along your eaves and fascia boards that looks deteriorated, or you push your finger in through it and it's soft and crunchy, fences that are wobbly, posts, things like that that are rotted out, that's a sign that you might have termite, wood rot, dry fungus rot, things like that. Or you find critter droppings around there. Usually see those in the water heater or the HVAC kind of warm, cozy spots. That's a good time to call out a termite pest inspection company. Most of them will do a free inspection. You can have them do that inspection ahead of time. You can get that report and say, well, I either know what I'm gonna have to pay, I know what that cost is when I do sell my house, and we negotiate those things. And you can disclose that report and say, hey, we have the report, here's the items, we're aware. We'll either take care of them or we'll negotiate these with you. Or you can just have it done beforehand. You can have all those wood repairs done. You can have it all taken care of. You can have the home spot treated if that's what it calls for. Most companies can also do attic heat treatment to remediate any active termites. And if you do need a full fumigation, you can then do that either after kind of the move out, before you close escrow, or you can just have it done, bag up all your food and do what's needed to fumigate the house, and you're fully cleared of all the wood destroying pest issues that might be there. But it's something good to know, because it can cause a lot of damage. A house can really be damaged structurally by a severe termite infestation if it's not caught in time. So that's it, that's everything. I know this is a super kind of long, in-depth video, but I kind of wanted it to be that for a reason, because it's just a good resource guide for you to look at. If you're just, again, you want to just do a whole home kind of quick tune-up, just check those things that can really cause big issues down the road that are simple fixes when you catch them in time. Or if you are looking to sell your house somewhere in the future, the next few months or the next year, it's just something easy to go through and really just check those items that are the most common things that I see pop up, when I'm either representing a seller, representing buyers. It just becomes this thing where you see a lot of ugly stuff, just a laundry list, just item after item after item after item on an inspection report. You just start thinking like, wow, this house is just not taken care of. And the biggest thing that I tell my buyers when I look at a home is I tell them, look at the property. Does it look like the homeowner took care of things when there were issues? If there was a leak, does it look like they took care of it? Does it look like they took care of a broken sprinkler head? It's a simple thing, but it shows a sense of pride in homeownership. When a homeowner has pride in their property, they take care of it. And it just tells you that there's nothing kind of secretly waiting behind the walls. There's this big issue that just like nobody takes care of anything, and it's just compounding until it becomes a very big issue that the new buyer is going to have to, now pay for. So that pride in home ownership really reflects a lot when you're looking at a home inspection report. You can tell when a homeowner was just really on top of it and took care of everything. They had everything either maintained by professionals, a monthly pest service, those kind of things. Just taking care of a home. It shows. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got some value out of it. If you have other questions on other things, again, I'm not a home inspector. I'm a realtor here in San Diego, but I have previously worked in the construction trades in years past. I consider myself a very handy guy. I can do just about most stuff around the house and fix things. And I've worked on a lot of these things and addressed problems like this on my own home. So if you have questions, let me know. I'd love to help if you're looking to get your house ready, or if you're just looking to kind of tune it up and check out those things. So take care. Hope you enjoyed.